Return to the Wild Woman, a soul care podcast where we discuss all things wild, wondrous, and of the womb space. I am your host, Tianna Barr. For the better part of the last decade, I have been a perinatal massage therapist, birth keeper, postpartum caregiver, and as of late, a birth assistant in training. I'm very excited to bring this episode to you, our first episode of Return to the Wild Woman. Today's episode is about fibroids and a journey through healing. Let me take a second to brag about our first guest, whom without none of this would be possible. Today, we will be chatting with the matriarch of the Soulcare Collective, Omikunle Ekundayo. Omi is our executive and creative director, birthing the Soulcare Collective from a dream of cultivating community. A graduate of the Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University, Omi holds a Master of Science in Community Psychology, specializing in Afro-centered psych and cognitive behavioral therapies. The roots of the Soulcare Collective began with retreats, a space where you can get away and be in healing with community. The onset of COVID brought us to the online space, expanding our reach around the globe and back again. I like to call Omi our Rihanna, where she does it all. Not only is she the wheels on which this train runs, but she also crafted the labor of love that is by Sojourn, bikinis, apparel, and accessories for all of your traveling needs. I know that some of her passion projects of the moment include Soulcare Sunday, a subscription that features weekly workshops that range from therapeutic lectures to meditations, breathwork, and energy healing, and other spiritual modalities, as well as revamping the Soulcare Retreat, which we'll hear a little bit more about later in today's episode. Woo, what a woman. Thank you for joining us today, sis. Welcome. Did I miss anything?
Thank you, beautiful. No, that was so comprehensive. Thank you. I'm like, this is me. You're talking about me.
This is you.
Thank you. That was a beautiful introduction. Thank you, Mama.
Of course. Tell us a little bit about what we're getting into today. I know that you yourself have experienced a fibroid journey. I would love to hear about your story, about how you maybe learned that you had fibroids, some of the beginning discomforts, and what the journey took for you to get diagnosed and beyond.
Yeah, I'm with you. This might be a bit of a long-winded response, but that's why we're here, you know.
Yes.
So let's see. The beginning of my fibroid journey, or just the initial symptoms that I began to feel, was just pain. My cycles began to feel increasingly uncomfortable, but at the time I didn't make the connection to having a fibroid. I hadn't been diagnosed at that time. I just thought, well, maybe it's the food that I'm eating. Maybe I need to eat anti-inflammatory foods and just change my diet, drink more water, start incorporating all the teas, the pau d'arco, the nettle tea, and just all, those reproductive health teas that folks recommend. So that's when I began my plant-based journey about, when was that? I would say that was maybe 2016. And then around 2019, that was when the heavy bleeding began. And I went to, I went to my primary care physician, and I just described some of the symptoms that I was experiencing, the heavy bleeding, feeling just extremely exhausted from all of the blood loss. Again, still not making the connection to having fibroids. And just all the other things, the whole laundry list of the different things that I was experiencing. And she simply just did a pelvic exam just by pressing down on my abdomen. And she said, I can feel the fibroid. You'll do an ultrasound or an MRI, but I can confirm just from feeling, your lower abdomen that you do have a fibroid, at least one. And so after that, she gave me a referral for, a ultrasound. So I went to that space and they were able to confirm it. I was able to see it, put eyes on it. And at that point, I needed to identify an OBGYN in New York, because I just didn't have one. I had just moved. Um, and so I found someone, Dr. Moses. I'm sure we'll talk about some of the unethical healthcare that Black women receive at some point, but she was definitely not my favorite, not my favorite doctor. She also was able to confirm the fibroid through a transvaginal examination and also through ultrasound. And she decided to do a hysteroscopy. A hysteroscopy is a procedure in which they go in through the vaginal canal to shave down the fibroid. So what we confirmed through the last two ultrasounds was that I had a submucosal fibroid, which was about the size of a grapefruit, sitting on top of my cervix. And that is why there was just incessant bleeding. And there was also a little microfibroid behind it, but we didn't see that and didn't even find out about that until like 2 years later. So we scheduled that surgery. She shaves it down as much as she could. She calls me that evening. It was an outpatient procedure. And she tells me that she was not able to get the entire fibroid out. She did as much as she could. It was much bigger than she expected. And she wanted to go back in, do the same procedure.
Wow. So what a journey. You're already touching on some of the things that I planned on getting into today in terms of ethical and unethical healthcare procedures. I'm wondering, were there any other options that were given to you before jumping to surgery? And also sort of a two-part question or acknowledgement, because I'm not glad that it was so large that you could feel it through a palpation exam, but I'm glad that there weren't any other diagnostic tests necessary before finding out that it was a fibroid. I know that a lot of times, especially since this is a dis-ease in the body that is primarily associated with Black women, that it wasn't something that you needed to go through trial and error through even getting a diagnosis. So I would love to hear about if there was more options for you for treatment in the earlier stages, or if it was, since it was such a large fibroid, if it was just a jump to a procedure.
I'm with you. Yeah, that's such a great question. Because my life, my world, my lifestyle is holistic. I believe that I had exhausted all of my holistic attempts, and so I'll share some of the things that I tried. I've already mentioned that my diet transitioned to being fully plant-based. So plants were the base of my diet. Would I have an egg here or there? Definitely. Would I have a little, some shrimp, here and there? But mostly I was eating plant-based. I incorporated a bunch of herbs into my diet: pau d'arco, nettle tea, raspberry leaf, um, dandelion, maca. Just, I can't even recall all the different herbs that I was taking at once. I actually flew to Brazil to learn about herbs and pick them out of the Amazon myself because, yes, I didn't want to go under the knife. I did not want to have surgery initially. But, I had a come to Omi moment where I realized that Western medicine originates in indigenous medicine. And our ancestors were also doing procedures and C-sections in ancient times, And so this idea that I was unable to heal myself or that I didn't do enough before I got to the table, the operation table, I just had to sit with it and detach from that because it is not true. I needed help and I wanted to be well. And so, that led to that. And I did just want to share one other protocol. I tried, what is it? I believe they've had so many rebrands. The Aboriginal Medical Association had a fibroid protocol that included qigong, a tonic or tincture of herbs, and I believe meditation. Mm. And so I tried that for a bit. It just was a bit on the more expensive side, you know. So I was only able to maybe do that for about 2 months before I was just like, okay, you know, I might have to just try something else. But I tried a ton or a slew of different holistic wellness approaches before I decided to jump. But did my doctor, my OBGYN, offer me any other alternatives? No, no, she didn't. She just said, let's get you well.
Yes, it sounds like you went through all of the possible like preliminary holistic treatments for you went to Brazil. You went you traveled and
I did.
picked herbs yourself. Yes, okay. That definitely
Yeah,
answers my question. But from your OB, there were no alternatives, just straight to an outpatient procedure. Please
that's right.
continue your story.
Thank you. Um, let's see, where did we leave off? So yeah, so she gave me the phone call. She said she was not able to get all of it, and that we would discuss what my next steps would be during pre-op. I'm sorry, post-op. That post-op conversation never happened, and I called to try to make it happen, and for some reason, I just could not get on her schedule. And this is when my feelings started to become hurt because I just my entire time working with this woman, I knew that clients or patients with fibroids or maybe disease or unwellnesses was not her priority. It was obvious to me that she preferred birthing clients, that was her joy. And I love that for her. I think that healthcare providers should lean into the space that does make them happy. And I do wish that she did not accept me as a patient because being ignored for post-op completely aggravated the fibroid that was sitting on top of my cervix. So it tripled in size. And then that was when I began to bleed every single day for 2 years. I bled every single day for 2 years straight. And the reason why it took so long for me to get help within those 2 years is because of the pandemic. It just was not a priority at that time. You know, it wasn't to them. It was not life threatening. Um,
So I want to back up to the point where you were not able to get on the OB schedule for your post-op conversation and how to redirect after not being able to reach all of the fibroid and it doubling in size and you beginning to bleed every single day for the next 2 years. Are you at all familiar, and I feel like you are, with the metaphysical or spiritual meaning of a fibroid growth?
yeah. So when I've had readings done, I didn't include that when you asked about my holistic approach, but I did have a reading done, and they said that the fibroids were children that weren't born, children that were meant to come into the world sooner, and it manifested as this growth. And then that was when I learned that sometimes fibroids can have teeth, they can have hair, and just different growths. And so that is the extent or the scope of my knowledge for the metaphysical, um, theory behind fibroids. But it sounds like you have something to, to expand that. Yeah.
Well, first of all, that's terrifying.
Mine did not have teeth. I will say that I did not have teeth and hair. But it happens, you know.
I'm glad to hear that. No, that's not where I was going with that at all. I've read that some of the metaphysical manifestation of fibroids is having difficulty uh, receiving the love that maybe you are so used to giving out to others.
Mm,
And in that light, it would make sense in my mind, just because you are such a cultivator and such a powerhouse of a woman that you produce at an expedited rate. Oftentimes when we are in our boss energy like that, it can be hard to receive love to the level or the standard that we are needing for it to actually reach our core or our center.
That's profound. And it makes a lot of sense, of course, when you correlate it to my life, but just thinking about just Black women collectively being the most neglected group, you know, just in society, and just the expectation of black women or indigenous folks, women of color, Latinx folks to just give and give and give and not be poured back into. So yeah, that makes sense just in theory. Wow. Yeah.
Wow. I thank you for that tidbit about them being children as well. I've never heard that before. And that's wild. I didn't mean to get you
No,
off of your thought train where you were going. Please continue.
it is okay, Mom. Okay. I want to back up a little bit and mention that so after being ignored by Dr. Moses and not receiving any post-op care, the fibroid pretty much tripled in size. And at that point, the pandemic had began. And so finding a new OB or OBGYN gynecologist during the pandemic was extremely hard. Um, a lot of people were not accepting new patients. And so with the fibroid doubling in size, I began to bleed every single day without end. There was no end to my period, my cycle for about 2 years. And so that led to a lot of blood loss volume in my body, which led me to being admitted to the emergency room, I would say at least 5 times for emergency blood transfusions before I decided I need a hematologist. Like I need an outpatient hematologist because I don't want to go to the hospital in the middle of a pandemic. It was just that was scary. That was very nerve wracking for me. But for anyone who has ever experienced having a hemoglobin of a 4 or a 5, you literally can't walk more than 4 to 5 feet without losing your breath. So I would be walking these extremely short distances and then just having to completely sit on the floor and regain my strength. I was not able to stand and brush my teeth and wash my face. I had to sit and do those things. And so, with so much respect for um, folks who have long-term disabilities, excuse me, I would say that having fibroids in the short term, it did disable my person. Like I was not able to work. When I did, I was completely bleeding through sessions. I was watching the color leave my face as I was losing the blood on camera, having individual sessions with my clients. And so it just, fibroids completely changed my life at that point. Um, and so, yeah.
There's no amount of replenishing that you can do without a hematologist. It sounds like I was going to ask how you managed or how you were able to replenish yourself, but it doesn't sound like
Mm,
that is even an option when you're losing that much blood for such a consistent amount of time. Did you
right.
recognize any other like bodily functions that were affected by that time of excessive bleeding?
Mm. Just that the extreme exhaustion and fatigue, just disinterest, lack of motivation wasn't myself. I just completely was not like this inspired, community oriented, motivated, happy person. I just became I can only do the bare minimum. It just really changed my person. And at the time I was living alone. And so I just felt so alone. And then we had a pandemic and, visitation and visit, like everything just changed so quickly. And Yeah, it just, what else? You asked about symptoms. Um, so just bleeding incessantly, feeling exhausted, emotional symptoms were lack of motivation, um, just disinterested, and definitely depression. I 100% experienced some depression during that time of having chronic unwellness.
And all of these symptoms sound like they were accompanied by very physical symptoms, the bleeding, the physical pain or discomfort. What were you experiencing in terms of discomfort at this point?
So at this point, I had no idea that I also had stage 2 endometriosis. So the pain was crippling. The pain was debilitating. It was get into a ball wherever you can, on the floor, in the bed, wherever you can, and just try your best to like bring your person some comfort. So I was using CBD oils for a bit to mitigate some of the pain. What worked the most was extremely boiling hot baths or hot water bottles or heating pads. And so there was actually a point where I burnt the first couple of layers of my skin on my tummy because I was using the heating pad just nonstop. It was the only thing that helped my pain. Naproxen, I was prescribed naproxen. In the States, I think you have to be prescribed it, but I was in Mexico and I noticed that you can just get it, over the counter. But naproxen helped more than Tylenol, more than Aleve, more than any other painkiller. Um, I asked for something stronger and my doctor refused to give it to me. I don't know if there was a thought that I would misuse something stronger or if I was lying to get something stronger, but that was really disappointing as well. That again, having stage 2 endometriosis, for anyone who doesn't know, endometriosis is a part of the top 20 most painful diseases in the world. And I was on stage 2, there's 4 stages. And so it is like having a heart attack every single time you have a wave of pain from this disease. And naproxen or Tylenol barely takes away some of that pain. And so that was really disheartening and saddening, that I wasn't able to get anything stronger and I wasn't able to find any herbs at the time that helped relieve some of that pain. So that is a bit of some of the symptoms. I went to the oncology center twice a week for maybe 6 weeks straight. No, 12 weeks straight. I started in November, December, January, February, and I didn't stop until February. So for about 4 months, I went twice a week for iron infusions and blood transfusions as needed. And within those 4 months, there were times where I still had to go to the emergency room because the blood loss might have happened on the weekend when the oncology center was closed and I wasn't able to get the blood transfusion outpatient. But that was such a supportive space to be in. The nurses were fantastic. I absolutely loved them. They called me, and it was actually the day before I gave birth, and they asked me, "Ashley, how you doing?" That's my birth name, my government name. They were like, "Ashley, how are you doing? We've been thinking about you. We miss you so much." And I was just so excited to tell them I'm doing great. I'm giving birth tomorrow. Everything is amazing because I cried with them the day I signed for surgery and forfeited the opportunity to ever have a vaginal birth because at some point I did have a myomectomy, which we'll get to, but it was just such a full circle moment when they called the day before I gave birth. So yeah, that is a bit of that journey throughout the pandemic. Um,
What a beautiful full circle moment to be contacted by the oncology center right before giving birth to a little baby boy. That's so sweet. I want to touch on how it could have also been difficult to be in an oncology center while battling some of the emotional disturbances that came along with this fibroid journey, and making sure that you have enough iron, have enough blood, while you're still not even at a point where you are healing yourself. At this point, you're just managing. Please continue on your story. I just wanted to acknowledge how I'm sure that was probably difficult, and um, did not contribute to any essence of healing in that space.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that, seeing other people who were much more unwell than I was, it it did give me some reminders to be grateful, that I have a plan, or I was developing a plan. I didn't have a plan. I was just kind of at the oncology center with just vibes. And he kept my hematologist, he kept telling me, he was like, you have to find someone who will do this procedure. And I'll get to that at some point. That was so challenging, but I will say the team, the medical staff were so energetic and supportive and kind and nurturing that it kind of sometimes it was a highlight being alone at home with this chronic unwellness, and then going to this space where you are kind of like the center of care. I did enjoy it sometimes. You know what I mean? Because for the 30 minutes of my iron infusion treatment, I just had to sit my feet up, drink my little water, my snacks, or my fruit drink, whatever it was that I brought with me, and just be catered to. They kept checking in, are you okay? Do you need anything? And so, yeah, it wasn't motivating. It wasn't great emotionally to see folks that might have been actually diagnosed with cancer and just, more severely unwell. But I will give it to them that they took care of us, and it was a brand new facility. So beauty is also healing. So just being in like a new space. I don't know if that sounds weird to folks, but
It doesn't.
helps.
It,
Okay.
it makes it makes a ton of sense, and I feel like it is important to acknowledge where we can have more gratitude, especially when we recognize folks that this isn't just a moment in time for them. Like, this is something that's been ongoing for years and years, and maybe is uh, not a pit stop, but more of a long-term experience where they may not fully recover. So I think that
Right.
that's amazing to acknowledge your gratitude in those moments. And I think it's beautiful that you were able to be a light in the dark for them in moments where you were just at the oncology center with vibes. Because I'm sure that as your iron was coming back up and as you were getting
Mhm.
your blood transfusions, that your energy came back and your essence and who you
Mhm.
are. You were able to bring the laughs. You're able to bring some of the energy back
Mhm.
into the room.
I'm actually glad you mentioned that, because I just have one more story to share about
Please.
being at that space before we transitioned. There was a moment within the 4 months that I was there where I watched my body release all of the blood that they just gave me through an in-house blood transfusion. And I called and I left a message for my doctor, and he asked me to come in. And he looked at me and he said, Miss Freeze, I'm looking at you. You don't need a blood transfusion. You're fine. And I said, well, I'm telling you, as the person who watched liters of blood leave my person, leave my body, I need another blood transfusion. I'm tired. And so he said, well, let's just do the blood work. I'll give you a call in the morning. He called me the next day at 6 a.m. He said, I'm so sorry. He said, I will never not believe another person when they tell me what they experienced in their body, because he was making an assessment based off of the way I looked. Um, I might have brushed my hair, I might have put on a little lip gloss because you look good, you feel good, but that didn't mean that I didn't need blood. If I am a year and a half in of dealing with having a low hemoglobin level, then I've learned to adjust, right? Sometimes, unfortunately, unwellness can become your new normal. And so he was just looking at a person who was a little bit put together and just didn't believe what I was saying until he saw it on paper.
I'm so into this conversation, and it's
Yeah.
tying in so many of the questions that I want to tap into as we keep going. I'm so glad that your doctor was able to acknowledge his oopsie and come into a space where he was able to course correct and find better care as a practitioner. Um, I just wanted to add that. Please continue. I'm with all of what you're saying. Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Mama. Let's see. So maybe we can pick up where my hematologist asked me to find a surgeon. He was just like, he said you need to have a myomectomy. A myomectomy is a procedure, as I mentioned earlier, where your surgeon will either go in like laparoscopically through your belly button and through two tiny holes in each side of your belly, and also through small, maybe about an inch and a half incision right above the bikini line or right below the bikini line. And so he recommended that I have that procedure so that they could remove the submucosal fibroid. And the precursor to even getting someone to sign on to that surgery was. So we knew from the first surgery, the hysteroscopy, that the fibroid was too big for any surgeon to go in transvaginally and try to shave it down, pull it out. So I went for the MRI, no complaints there, very, very simple. I'm not afraid of being in small, tight spaces, and that um, that exam was localized. It was localized to my waist, so everything was fine. It was a very, very short procedure. They give you a DVD of it and all of the things. And so once I had that, I was finally able to find an OBGYN who was a colleague of my hematologist. And this was a male OB. He was Nigerian, is Nigerian. And, I went to him maybe 3 or 4 times. And he really did not do anything but say, yes, you have a fibroid, which is what we all knew. There was a very strange conversation that we had because, again, my government name is Ashley, but I go by Omikunle, which is the name that my ancestors have given me. And so I was wearing a nameplate at one of our appointments. And he said, "What is this Omikunle? What is this necklace you're wearing?" I was like, "Oh, this is my name. This is the name that I go by." And he says, "Are you Nigerian?" And I'm like, "Yes, ancestrally, yes, my ancestors are Nigerian," which is always like a strange conversation to have as someone who's gone through a re-Africanization process with a continental African. Sometimes it is just a disconnect. They're like, "What are you talking about? You're Nigerian or you're not?" You know what I mean? So, so he then goes on to ask me, "So are you Muslim or are you Christian?" And I say, "Well, I'm neither. I practice Ifa."
Can you explain a little bit of what Ifa is?
Yes. So Ifa is a West African indigenous practice where we how can I summarize or synthesize this amazing tradition? Uh, we have a deep, deep respect for nature. We have a deep respect for our elders, our ancestors, for children, and for the fulfillment of our destiny. That is the most simplest way I could explain the tradition. And so he asked me again, are you Muslim? Are you Christian? And again, I identified as a practitioner of Ifa or Isheshe. And he asked me, why didn't the Orisha save me? And so, for anyone who might not know, Orisha are the the deities or the gods and goddesses that our ancestors have identified in nature. So yes, he asked me, why didn't the Orisha save me? And I just was so taken aback, because do people in Islam not have fibroids? Do Christians not experience fibroids? Do Jewish people not experience fibroids? Like, everyone within any tradition, if you have either the biogenetic marker for fibroids, or if you live the life where fibroids have developed in your body due to environment, due to the food, due to stress, due to whatever. But I was taken aback. And that was the same day he let me know that if I don't have the surgery soon, then I'm going to die. He said, you need to have your myomectomy. Your body can't keep losing blood and receiving blood transfusions. He said that's unnatural. And I agreed with him. I didn't love getting blood transfusions, but I needed it to live. And so I said, well, what are some of my options? And can you do the surgery? And he said, well, no, I wouldn't be able to offer you the surgery for 8 months. But in the meantime, let's medically induce menopause. And I said, oh, well, let's talk about that. And so there was a medication that I received by way of a shot called Lupron, which medically induced menopause. And it did give me some relief. It did stop the bleeding significantly. Lupron is also one of those medicines or medications that doubles for endometriosis as well. So my pain went down. And I started to return to myself while I was 29 with menopause. Like I did feel more like myself than I had within those 2 years prior. There were still moments in time where I needed blood transfusions. And so, yeah, one of those days, I want to say it's April. So this was in February, just to give folks a timeline. So in February, I went ahead and went forward with the Lupron, with medically inducing the menopause. Once you start that, it takes about 6 months for that medicine to leave your person anyway, and for your body to return to its natural biological functions. And I received 2 doses of Lupron. So I received the 3-month dose twice, February and April. February, April, March. Well, February, March, April. Yep. So then, yeah, just making sure my timeline is correct. And so then, I don't know, Tianna, my spirit just led me. This is just one of those moments where you're just guided by the ancestors, or you're guided by a higher power, whatever you call that higher power, Allah, Olodumare, God, whatever that power may be. I just was guided to a hospital very, very close to me, which is interesting because I didn't go to the hospital for care all but once. And I went to their website, and I went to their women's health website, and I just found a number, and I called the number, and I explained everything that I was experiencing to this Black woman on the other end. And she just didn't know how to receive everything that I was saying, which is everything that I've shared with you all on this podcast. And all I know, she must have put urgent, exclamation point, emergency, because the next day, 8 a.m., someone called me from Dr. Lutz's office. Dr. Lutz was the surgeon who actually removed the fibroid. And they asked me to come in as soon as possible. I came in, and I signed for surgery the same day. Something that took 2 years to do. Someone sitting in front of me said, I want to do this as soon as possible. I will move the surgery there.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And she moved some surgeries around that weren't as urgent. You know what I mean? And so I literally walked in there with a manila envelope this thick of just all of my paperwork, from hematology, from emergency room visits, to say I need help. And also with that MRI CV, she said, this is everything I would have asked you to come back in and give me. Let's just go ahead, pick a day. Does this day and time work for you? I said, any day and time would work for me, honestly. And so yeah, 13 days later, which is such an important number, 13,
I do.
So, yeah, we had the procedure, we had the myomectomy, and that was when she was able to remove the submucosal fibroid and then a tiny fibroid that was behind it, and stage 2 endometriosis. Endometriosis is a disease that can only be confirmed through surgery. Um, you can describe your symptoms to a medical professional and they can give you a presumptive diagnosis of endo, but you don't know until you see it, because it's just one of those pain diseases that it lives in the body,
Commonly
Yeah.
missed, similar to fibromyalgia in that way. Yes. Yeah. I have so many questions. My first is, I'm trying to frame this question in an air of empowerment rather than slander for the medical community. But I have had a very similar experience of obstetric violence, or just violence from a physician. And I am wondering, did you feel in your experience, like being in the time and in the air of COVID, do you think that it was something that simply got pushed down the priority list because there was so much happening? Or do you think that some of the lack of urgency and pushback in regards to healing and treating your diagnosis was because Black women are of the majority of cases that deal with this disharmony, and it was maybe a subconscious act of violence from your obstetric team?
Right. I'm with you. I think that a few things were happening all at once. I think that I was in a unique situation where I did not have an OBGYN with this long-standing relationship with, because I had just moved back to New York from England, and actually now that you just asked me that question, that was where I first experienced pain. It was in England when I was doing my clinical placement for my master's degree for FAM. And so, yeah, I didn't have any pain until I got there, and I thought that was so interesting. But I digress. Back to the original question. So yes, not having an identified OB or OBGYN in New York was a barrier. The pandemic was a barrier. And then being a Black woman was a barrier. So I think all three of those things happening at once was a barrier to me receiving the care in the timeline that I deserved. I don't think that it, I know for a fact, as the person who lived through it, it was unacceptable to bleed for a year and a half and have to get treatments twice a week. As a person without cancer, yes, fibroids are a tumor, but I don't have cancer. Why am I at an oncology center twice a week? I think, to answer your question, it was a combination of those three barriers happening at once.
I completely agree that is unacceptable. But I understand that might have also just been the world that we were living in at the moment, with so many things going on.
Right.
In the moments where you were offered treatment and you were offered care, I know that a lot of the things that were offered were at a moment's notice. A lot of it was time sensitive. How did you arrive at a full and complete yes in your body to know to move forward with these treatments, besides the time sensitivity and impending demise of your physical person? How were you able to kind of get through the woods on that and in your body know that this was the right path for you?
I'm with you. I trusted my intuition and I backed that up with research. So before I accepted Lupron, the shot that, induced the menopause medically, I went on YouTube and I typed in Lupron Black women fibroids, and I listened to other Black women describe their experience with having taken Lupron. And then with the myomectomy, I wanted the surgery since the hysteroscopy 2 years prior. So that was just it was a definite decision once um, the initial procedure just aggravated it and didn't help. I knew that I needed a higher level of care. And again, I just leaned on the fact that medicine belongs to us as well, and I just think that sometimes, we can be a little too, oh, I don't want the wellness community to beat me up, but we can just be a little too unrealistic with, follow Dr. Sebi's protocol and just be completely alkaline and go ground and sleep this way and use this crystal and do all the things. I did all of the things, guys. I did all of the things. And I'm sure it helped. I'm sure it helped. I'm sure it slowed down some of it. I didn't share this, but I even visualized um uh I visualized surgery removing it just through energy medicine. You know what I mean? And so that was one of the protocols that I used. I was receiving energy healing on a monthly or bi-monthly basis. And so I really did try. I really did try to do things as naturally, organically, holistically alkaline as possible. Um, and when I just wasn't well enough to be a fully functioning person, I said, okay, well, I have to do the surgery. I have to take the shot, the Lupron. I have to take the naproxen.
I completely agree. I think that there is a time and a place for all modalities, and there is a difference between being in pain and suffering from that pain,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like there is a time and a place for therapeutic rest. And that's when we need to lean on our modern medicine and modern technology to be able to relieve some of the discomfort that we're feeling, especially if all of our holistic avenues have led to dead ends.
That's right. You have to make the best decision for you, by you, you know? And I
Absolutely.
also felt supported by my family. I felt supported by my ancestors. It was the right procedure for me. It was the right treatment plan for me based on all of the self healing that I did, and all the community healing. People poured into me. I wasn't doing the energy medicine myself. I had someone say, "Hey, I really want to help you shrink this fibroid. Let's do energy healing. Let's set this up." And so, I give thanks for everyone who sent me Uber Eats gift cards and flowers and checked in and called. And I also apologize to the friendships that I wasn't able to sustain because I just didn't have the energy to. So I had about 5 people that I spoke to for about 2 years because I didn't have the bandwidth outside of those 5. And also still leading the Soulcare Collective. And I don't even think that you all knew the extent to everything that I'm sharing. I was holding it together by threads the last
I,
2 years.
yeah, and like I would check in, but I had absolutely no idea that you were going through it to this extent.
Mm.
So I remember around the time that you were having your myomectomy, what was the healing like after that surgery?
Sister, it was simple. I slept for about 3 or 4 days. And on the fourth day, my mom kept saying, "Sit down, put that down. That's too heavy. You're doing too much," because I felt so much better. And I just was like ready to like get back to,
Yourself.
to my life,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that the recovery it was simple. It was easy. I give thanks to my mom who came to my house and took care of me for I think about 5 days. And then she was like, "All right, I can come back or you can come up to my house, but I gotta go home," you know. And so yes, I did not have a painful, recovery. I only took the Tylenol and the ibuprofen, which was you take it about every 3 hours. You alternate ibuprofen, Tylenol, ibuprofen, Tylenol. But there was
Mhm.
oxytocin, or oxycodone, one of them.
Oxycodone, I think it is. Yeah,
Oxycodone,
oxycodone.
yes,
Yeah.
oxycodone. So yeah,
Like
they
they
also
don't use
prescribed.
Oxycontin anymore.
Okay. See, I also have mommy brain, so I don't even know
I
what
got
day
you.
is it. What time?
No, I got you. As I was saying it, I was like, Oxycontin, oxycodone. They don't use Oxycontin anymore.
Yeah. So that, yeah, great question. But it was simple. I just encourage folks to rest, take advantage, sleep. I slept for at least 24 hours before I like woke up and said, okay, I'll have some soup now, you know. So yeah, I was out of it because they did give me fentanyl, so I was just completely just gone, you know. So yeah.
Wow. I
Mhm.
I would love to shift to a very sweet note. I would love to hear about your fertility journey, as I know that you just had a sweet baby boy last year. And did your fibroid experience impede your ability to conceive at all?
It was such a surprise, and he was just made with so much love. Me and his dad are so in love, and we just love our baby boy so much. Like he's everything to me. I've never experienced this level of love in my entire life. People ask me, what does motherhood feel like? And for me, it feels like an unending heart meditation. It just feels like my heart is just opening every single day. And it is just the sweetest bliss I've ever experienced. And I look at him and I'm like, I can't believe I made this person from scratch. Like, your feet, your legs, your eyes. Like it's incredible. It's incredible. I love it.
I just melted. That was the sweetest thing ever. That's the sweetest thing I've ever heard. An unending heart meditation. That is motherhood. Wow.
Oh, he's amazing. He makes me so happy.
And you deserve that. You deserve that bliss.
Thank
Is there,
you.
you're welcome. Is there anything else that you'd like to share about maybe the takeaways that you had from this overall journey? And maybe some advice that you would give to someone who's on their own fibroid journey?
Mhm. Thank you. I would encourage folks to advocate for themselves. Um, Never stop asking questions. Do not go under the knife with a doctor that you don't feel or a surgeon that you don't feel comfortable with. Um, just, if you can take anything away from my story or my experience and make your life, your recovery, your healing easier, please do it. If you need to go ahead and see a hematologist, go for it. If you want to try the holistic route first, go for it. You don't have to go to Brazil. You can go to the apothecary in Brooklyn. You know what I'm saying? We don't have to go that far, but just put yourself first. Nothing is more important than your wellness. And just also, sometimes we just need to sit down. I think also a part of that unwellness was I really did need to sit down and be in somewhat of like a meditation, recovery, healing state for 2 years after just kind of being on go. That is unnatural. That is not the life that my ancestors visioned for me, as just whatever girl boss, thing. There was not enough work life balance. And so, yeah, I would just encourage folks to take a balanced approach to life in general. Um, Healthy womb, fibroids, endometriosis, PCOS, PMDD or not. When your creation center is in misalignment, it is a call to sit your ass down, for lack of a more eloquent way to put it. Sit down and go within, and figure out what your body needs. And yeah, I just am sending love to anyone within the sound of my voice. I'm holding space for you. We do have a women's group. It's called the Certified Collective. We hold space on Facebook, and you are welcome to join and share your story, the highlights, the not so great days, ask for advice, just share your reflections, whatever it is that you need. Take full advantage of that space. We're here for you. And that space isn't just limited to folks with fibroids. It's just anyone with a womb that is looking for a space um, to just exist. You're welcome to join us and be in that space. And we'll include the link for that. For anyone who is listening on YouTube, we'll put the link for that group in the description box below.
Yeah, I would just like to echo advocating for yourself, whether you're going through a reproductive wellness disharmony or any other bodily disharmony that involves a doctor. I've experienced violence with providers that had nothing to do with my reproductive system and was just like merely a shoulder incident. So advocating for yourself is going to be a front line on any front that you're approaching medical care. You would hope that your provider would be on your side. That's not always the case. So walking in, talking to yourself, really being solid in your goals and what you'd like to get out of every appointment that you have with a provider is one of my main takeaways from my own medical journey. But you said that so beautifully. I just wanted to echo. Thank you so much for our conversation today, Omi. I feel like I've learned so much more about you as a person, about your journey and some of the hidden struggles that I didn't even see in the entire time that I've known you. I think that this story is going to raise a lot of a lot of awareness, excuse me, for the disharmony and dis-ease that fibroid brings so many like you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for creating the space to talk about this unforgettable time in my life, and of course, I am so grateful for you, and just all that you add to the Soulcare Collective and how you show up for your clients and how you have shown up for me. You're so nurturing, so loving, so kind. And so thank you. Thank you for creating this space. And I look forward to seeing this grow. This is the initiation of, the Return to the Wild Woman podcast. And I'm honored to have been your first guest.
We truly are crossing a threshold. Tell me before we go, how can the people find you? And are there any other exciting things that you'd like to share with the people before we go today?
So one of the ways that folks can work with me is by joining a support group that we call Soulcare Sunday. The primary purpose of Soulcare Sunday is to help you return to your natural state of well-being. The workshops that we offer provide an opportunity for you to explore your inner self, discover your purpose, and gain a deeper understanding of your emotions, your thoughts, and your behavioral patterns. We love Soulcare Sunday, such an intimate space. You can come and go as you please. This offering is free for folks who qualify for free enrollment, but otherwise it is $10 a month. And then also 2024 brings the return of the Soulcare retreat. So we have 3 retreats planned at this time, and it's going to be amazing. And again, you can learn more about the retreats at soulcarecollective.org. And yeah, thank you. Those are my top 2.
Wonderful. I can't wait to tune in to Soulcare Sundays. And I know that you're going on 3 different voyages. So I would love to hear more about it and see more about it as it comes into the ether space. Thank you for your energy today, Omi. Today's sponsor is Gruns, and we're a big fan of their daily gummies. Why? It's a simple, holistic nutrition that works. With 60 whole food, bioavailable ingredients, vitamins, and minerals, super mushrooms, Gruns replaces handfuls of health products at a fraction of the cost. Benefits include gut health, immunity, brain health, cognitive focus, energy, thicker hair and nails, healthier skin, stress relief, recovery, strength building, better sleep, and overall health and wellness. And if you're wondering, yes, they're plant-based, vegan, gluten-free, and nut-free. For up to 40% off, visit our website, www.soulcarecollective.com. Collective.org, or if you're listening on YouTube, visit the description box below for the link.
If my thoughts are cleansed in all ways, could I start again? Go to the water, set all of my ancestors. We need the water, need to protect us. Sip it, bathe in it, let it wash away the violation. Sip it, bathe in it, let it wash away and hydrate you.